Hello and welcome to The Juice. Today we are interviewing a Spanish female icon, Cristina Forner from Marquesa de Caceres. We have two wines we're going to try. We're going to learn about the winery, and we're going to open our liquid passports and fly all the way to Rioja. Join me. Cristina, thank you for joining us. You look amazing over there at the winery. It's beautiful.
Yes, well, we are very privileged in this area, Rioja, which is one of the most prestigious wine area in Spain. And it's where my father founded Marquesa de Caceres in 1970. So last year, we were supposed to celebrate our 50th anniversary, but because of the pandemic, we had to postpone all our activities. But well, personally, I'm quite happy to introduce you to our wines, Marquesa de Caceres, and talk a little bit about our history.
Yes, so, you have a wonderful history. You were mentioning to me earlier that you were born in France and you sort of ventured over to Rioja. So tell us that story.
Yes, well, in fact, my family is Spanish by origin, and my grandfather had a wine business in Spain, in the Mediterranean coast, close to Valencia. And during the Spanish Civil War, all the family had to immigrate to France. So what could they do? Wine. So they start from a small vineyard in the southern part of France, and then they moved to be wine negotiants in the Rhone Valley and the Loire Valley. And in the 1960s, they had the opportunity to sell both activities and invest in Bordeaux at the time when Bordeaux was in the middle of an economic slump. So they bought first Château La Rose-Trinquedon, and 1 year after, Château Camassac classified growth. So that's how they brought back these two chateaux, which were almost abandoned to their former glory. And well, in the late 60s, my father wanted to come back to his homeland and create a new style of wine. So with the help of the Professor Émile Penaud, who was one of the most reputed enologists in France. They have been visiting most of the wine areas in the country, and my father just realized that Rioja had a great potential, but on that time, most of the reds, traditional reds, used to be aged for too long, whites and roses were almost oxidized, so he started a new style of wines, mainly focused on the terroir, and also in this Bordelais school of vinification in order to make full-bodied reds, well-balanced between the oak and the fruit, and fresh and lively whites and roses. So this has been the start. These wines marked a real revolution in the 70s here in Rioja. And obviously from 1970 to 1974, we didn't sell a single bottle because we had to make the wines, age them in barrel and then in bottle. And when we first started selling those wines, Spain wasn't prepared at all to this new style of wines. So we could survive with the export market. So we have been, I would say this has been our main vocation from the start. So personally, I joined the company in 1984, so 14 years after the foundation, to be in charge of the export market. So for many years, I've been traveling around by developing the existing markets, opening new wines. And I came from Paris because I've been trained in Bordeaux, worked in Paris. So moving from Paris to Rioja has been, I would say, decisive decision, a very difficult decision, but quite essential, because I felt that the history of my family well deserved my full commitment. So I have to say that when I arrived to Rioja, I've been so impressed by this hilly countryside, these super small plots of land, different exposition, altitudes, and just I could realize, because coming from Bordeaux, it was something so different. So I could realize that there was such a diversity of style of wines and also dimensions. So, well, this has been the part of the vocation we have been sharing with my father. And while for many years being involved in the export markets, where Marquesa de Cáceres nowadays is exporting more than 50% of its production. And while Canada is our fifth export market nowadays. And well, when my father retired in 2007, I took over the presidency of the company, and I thought that it was time also to expand our quality vocation to other premium wine areas, such as Breda, where we produce super white wines and where we have 125 hectares. And in 2019, we bought a winery, Finca La Capilla, as well in Ribera del Duero, with 60 hectares, which is a boutique winery. And this is part of our, I would say, strategy and objective to become one of the major reference talking about quality, prestige, Spanish wines. So this has been a busy period, but we have been also very involved in working even closer to the terroir by adapting our vinification techniques to every selection of grapes we make during the harvest, according to the altitudes, the different soils and exposition, in order to make a clear differentiation of our range of wines. So actually we have, talking about the reds Marquesa de Cáceres, we have a Crianza, which has been aged 14 months in oak and another 12 months at least in bottle. The Reserva, we will talk about it afterwards, and the Grand Reservas. But also we have reinforced our equipment with a sorting table to make a strict selection of grapes. We also have invested in different small stainless steel tanks and wooden tanks in order to pursue artisanal vinification and to produce Grand Reserva and also two iconic wines. We have Gaudium, which is top very limited quantity, full bodied wines, which is made from very old vineyards. One of these vineyards could resist the phylloxera and the MC. So we have, I was talking about differentiation. We have a nice range of red wines which are fulfilling different expectations. So, well, talking about aging, I think it's quite important here in Rioja, as talking about Marquesa de Cáceres. All our red wines are aged in barrels. So Crianza, we use 60% of American oak and 40% of French oak. And we get this, I would say, very smooth, well-balanced red with nice fruit. And let's talk about the Reserva. Are you ready to taste the Marquesa de Cáceres Reserva? Both wines are only made on the occasion of very good, exceptional vintages. We don't produce those wines every year. And this is a different selection of grapes. Talking about the Reserva, the average age is 45, 50 years old. So we have lower yields. We make a long skin contact fermentation, which can last up to 21 days in order to bring out most of these tannins, the color, to extract the color, the structure. But I would say one of the characteristics we are looking for is, even for those wines which have more structure, more concentration, we look for keeping this elegance and this finesse. So this wine has remained 20 months, where it gets this complexity, this spicy notes. So we can see that we have a deep ruby color.
Yes, it's gorgeous, gorgeous color. The label is very classic and elegant too.
Yes, that's what we have been also working with the labels to make them bring out most of the identity of the wines and the design. We try to get this harmony and this elegance not only into the wines but also the presentation. So this wine has a nice bouquet with ripe fruit. I would say some like ripe strawberries, raspberries.
It's gorgeous. It has some perfume on it. Violets. Yes. It smells gorgeous.
And then in the mouth, the wine we get, and I will enhance the importance of the Tempranillo grape, which is the main grape we have here in Rioja, and which provides this tannins, this structure, but at the same time you have the tannins which are quite smooth, well integrated with the rich fruit. And this wine has remained 20 months in French oak barrels, and another 2 years in bottle before being released. And this is also one of the benefits we have. It's all the reds which have been aged have had this aging in bottle, which helps to make the tannins rounder, smoother, and you get the opportunity to taste a wine which is showing its finesse and elegance.
I love that about Spanish Rioja, is that you know, there's some age on this wine that we didn't have to keep it in our cellars. You've done a lot of the work, which is so great when, you know, you really want to try smooth old wines with a little bit of age on them, but without having to keep them in your condo or an apartment at the right temperature.
Yes, and I think that at this stage there are very few wine producing areas we are caring so much about the bottle aging. So this wine, I think that the other thing which is quite important is talking about food and how well those wines can match with food. And often, well, here in Spain, lamb is probably one of the best example to match with this type of wines, because it's quite tasty, and you get this fat with integrate also with this the tannins, so you get a perfect match, but also a sirloin steak, and well, and some fishes as well, like sea bass. Here in Spain, we like to cook the sea bass in the oven with olive oil, garlic, so it's quite spicy and rich. And it's matching superbly with this reserva, for example. And obviously, this delicious ham we have in Spain, which is so famous, and you can enjoy in almost every place, every bar or restaurant. You can enjoy this superb Spanish ham.
I like that you brought up a very unclassical pairing, you know, teaching people that red wine and fish can go together when you're matching and balancing the flavors on the dish. Yes. That little bit of spice on that sea bass will pair so nicely with this soft, velvety, you know, gorgeous flavor of this wine. It's a great pairing.
Yes, and fish has a texture also, which helps to bring roundness to the wines as well.
Is that a Tempranillo vine right beside you?
We use there Tempranillo, mainly Tempranillo, and a little percentage also of Grenache and Graffiano. So Grenache that we select mainly in the upper vineyards, and we get this finesse, and Graffiano, which brings this fruity and nice acidity to the wine. So these grapes are bringing a nice complexity.
Yes.
And talking about this wine, well, we take care also to control the yields. We never we try to get 5,000 kilos per hectare, so it's a rather moderate yield, and that permits us to extract the structure and the complexity of the wine, because those wines have to age for a rather long period, so they need to get this structure to evolve and to get also a good potential for aging, because this reserve can be kept another 10 years at least.
Yeah.
If it is kept in good conditions. Well, quite often people drink it
now.
quite quickly, but important to know that this one can be kept as well.
Would you recommend decanting either of these wines? I know the next one we have coming up is the Grand Reserva, but
yes,
would you?
I think that the Grand Reserva merits to be decanted. Yes, you are right. Well, we continue to talk about it.
I mean, these wines, I really appreciate your story about how your family has modernized Rioja, bringing out this richness and this, approachability and this quality in the region. Yes. It's and it's really only happened in the last little while. So it's something that is now the modern Rioja is now, and wines are really performing well. And I think people love the taste profile from your wines.
Yes, and I know especially that Canada is a growing market for Rioja wines, and thank you very much for being one of our ambassadors to promote Rioja and well, with this interview to promote Marqués de Cáceres, because I'm always very pleased to present the family business and those wines which are quite well known and reputed for their quality. So let's go to the Grand Reserva.
Yes, the one thing I also love about these wines too is the price is so affordable. I mean, you feel like you can elevate your dining at home, particularly now, and in this pandemic, we're looking at ways to bring the restaurant experience home, and these wines are wonderful for that.
Yes, it's a great opportunity and pleasure to enjoy those wines at home. Good.
Wow, that's rich on the nose. That bouquet is very rich.
Yes. Well, this I forgot to mention that we tasted the Reserva 2015.
Yeah.
And this Grand Reserva is 2012. So 2012 has been an exceptional vintage, and this wine is selected from vines whose average age can vary from 60 up to 85 years old. So we have even lower yields than for the Reserva. It's a tiny production. Those wines, both all the wines made at Marqués de Cáceres are hand harvested. But talking about Reserva and Grand Reserva, they are harvested in small cakes of 10 kilos, so to protect the full the wool berry. And this Grand Reserva is made with a long skin contact fermentation. Part of the wine has had its malolactic fermentation in new French oak barrels. And the wine has remained, I was talking about Reserva, which was 12 months in oak. There we are talking about 24 months in oak in French oak barrels. And the wine is released when it has at least 3 years in bottle. So the Grand Reserva is made with even more extraction. It's full-bodied. We get rich tannins. The wines is more, we get these plum notes, spicy notes like vanilla, the nice touch of oak. Also like herbs.
Yes, definitely. A little bit more oak, a little bit more herbs, dried herbs on this wine.
And in the mouth, it's full, it's dense. We get this big volume, but at the same time, the freshness, the acidity brings a lot of freshness in the mouth, and it makes this wine, which has, I would say, maybe a bigger complexity than the Reserva, which Reserva is more oriented to the full, the roundness, the fruity character, and the Grand Reserva is getting this complexity, these peppery notes, herbal notes, chocolate, coffee. I think that we get such a wide aromas and notes in the mouth that makes it even richer. And this is a wine also which is matching very well with meats. And I think that Bison, which is one of your most well-known meat, is a good match with this Grand Reserva. But also, again, lamb, beef, and maybe some fishes as well. I was talking about sea bass, but I think this wine with this tasty fish is also showing its best, because those wines are, even though they get this structure, there is complexity, they remain fresh and elegant. And I think that's why probably nowadays they are a perfect match, and we could observe that traveling around, you just realize that these wines are combining perfectly with any food.
Yeah, they're very versatile, and I love that the beauty and the elegance of these wines, even though they are rich, you know, that Grand Reserva is rich and powerful, but that elegance just helps to balance it completely out, and your palate is just, it's like, you know, beautiful silk on your palate, even with that richness. It's quite gorgeous, and the balance is wonderful.
Yes, yes, and I think that well, these are wines which are interpreting the soul and the identity of Rioja, where we are located, and most of the grapes are coming from our village, Rioja Alta, and also Rioja Alavesa, where we have our own vineyard. And then by selecting these different plots of land, we are extracting, bringing out the identity, and keeping this artisanal process of vinification is permitting us to try to bring out their style and identity.
Yes, well, thank you. Go ahead.
And this is, well, the first step to introduce you to our wines, Marqués de Cáceres, and hopefully we will get, as soon as we can travel, more Canadian visitors to discover Marquesa de Cáceres and the richness of Rioja. So thank you very much for your invitation to this opportunity to show Marquesa de Cáceres wines. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristina. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.